Missed the UNH short. I had so many people in this chat saying, Martin, we should buy UNH, and I kept warning them away. So I suppose you're right. I didn't enter a short position, but you know what? I feel fine. You're welcome. You're welcome. Just doing the best I can. I mean, if business does not change, UNH is relatively attractive right now, but we just don't know what's happening to the business, right? If you assume it hasn't changed, you'll get a 30% pop. I'll look at Fiserv, but I don't know if we want to. Yeah, it is. I'd rather miss out than to take the risk. So if nothing has changed at UNH, which seems like maybe that's not true, given the CEO resigned, and there's this headline about fraud investigation. Now, managed care has been investigated for fraud, since time immemorial. So I don't think that that's going to be a big deal. But if we wait for the next quarter, the stock will pop by then. If we buy now, we're taking the risk that business is fine, it's a gamble, and then it'll pop 30%, or business is not fine, and we could look at another 30% or 50% down. I assume business is fine. So you're probably going to be just fine buying it here, but it's like an 80-20 that you're okay. But you might have to have it's not necessarily binary, by the way. Thank you, William. Thanks for the update. UNH isn't that risky. You can take a decent sized position. UNH is not going to mess you up. Well, if there's fraud and this was what happened at Tenet Healthcare. Again, a lot of people don't have these memories, but I got blood memories of this stuff. Tenet Healthcare was one of the biggest hospital companies. Okay, they had a bunch of fraud where they were actually making a ton of profit on unnecessary surgeries. Okay, they had a set of doctors that would just order surgeries for patients. Like, oh, you got to have heart surgery, buddy. Patient didn't need it. They did the investigation because, you make tons of money on those. It's the unknown unknowns. And patient didn't need the surgery. They were able to increase acuity, which is big in hospitals, bill the insurer. Nobody was none the wiser. And it was an extra padding to earnings. And when that went away from earnings, it kind of started a spiral of problems. We don't know look at Valiant. Valiant was doing great. And then Valiant had a distributor that it owned. And it was this very weird situation. And the house of cards kind of came tumbling down. So just be careful, We don't know how UNH has done this amazing run of profits, for the last decade. If there's anything squirrely in there, Trump might sniff it out, right? Yeah, I'll go. There's a lot of words. I'll give you a funny story. Just to show you how scumbaggery some of these DOJ guys are, deep state guys. There was a news article that I was under investigation, and I called the prosecutor the second I found the news investigation. I said, I want to know why I'm under investigation. I've done nothing wrong. And I said, am I under investigation? And there's I think 3 ways you could be under investigation. You're the subject or the target, or the main two. And if you're the target, that's bad. If you're a subject, you'd rather be a subject. But the problem here was that he said you're a subject, but you can always flip from being the subject to the target. So it's this very like, you can kind of have a non-denial denial of like, well, we've never been told we're under investigation. But, we were aware of subpoenas and all this stuff. Well, sometimes in an investigation, you're not supposed to be aware of it. So I don't know. Yeah, UNH has always outperformed Aetna and these other guys. And the question is, well, how? And, I'm sure it's perfectly kosher, but, I think a lot of the middlemen, you saw what Trump said about middlemen, right? He said, who are these middlemen? They made more money than everybody else. Did you guys see that? It was pretty funny.
Hey everyone, I'm Errol Bonnet.
This was without a doubt one of the craziest speeches I've ever heard.
Same plant by the same company. It's the identical pill that I buy in New York. And here I'm paying $88 in London. In New York, I'm paying $1,300. Now, this is a great businessman, but he's not familiar with this crazy situation that we have. But he was stunned. But it was just one of those stories. And I brought it up with the drug companies, represented by somebody who's very, very smart, good person too. And we argued about it for about a half hour. And then finally he just said, because they can't justify it, he just said, look, you got me. You got me. I can no longer just. They've been justifying this crap for years. They said, oh, it's research and development. I said, well, research and development, other countries should pay research and development too. It's for their benefit. It was just one of those things. And the other countries would set a price, and they'd meet the price, and they'd say, if you don't meet the price, you can't sell it in our country. I said, well, then you walk away, and they'll call you back, and they'll sell it in the country. But now they'll have to do that. So for the first time in many years, we'll slash the cost of prescription drugs, and we will bring fairness to America. Drug prices will come down by much more, really, if you think 59. If you think of a drug that is sometimes 10 times more expensive, it's much more than the 59%. It depends on the way you want to analyze it, but in one way you can analyze it that way. But between 59 and 80, and I guess even 90%. So when I worked so hard in the first term, and if I got prices down, remember I was the only one to ever get prices down for a full year, but I get them down like 2%, and I thought it was like a big deal. Well, we're getting them down 60, 70, 80, 90%, but actually more than that if you think about it in the way mathematically. And Pharma has to say, we're sorry, but we'll not be able to do this any longer to these countries that have been so tough. They've been very tough, nasty. It's trade. And Pharma is also very powerful. And the Democrats have protected Pharma. This is the Democrats have protected Pharma. These are the Democrats. And by the way, I just called the Speaker of the House, and I just called our leader in the Senate, John Thune, Mike Johnson. Spoke to both of them. If tariff money is coming in, drugs is going, that'll easily pay for the Golden Dome a week ago. Spend in the world by, 4%. The thing, by the way, Pharma can doubt for years, pharmaceutical and drug companies. And I see that they sell us 13 health world. The numbers are the same money, be the same top line, but it's a much smaller pricing. There's a new word that I came up with, which I think dire need, and I would guess there is in the world, more than favorite nickel. Price it, a common ad. Think of that. So $40 times more in the United States. But we never had a president that had the courage to do this, or an obligation to let it die. I chose that we had to make it possible. As good as possible means I don't want to have a bad form of healthcare. There's a chance to actually do a healthcare that's much better than Obamacare and for less money, which if you guys would work on that along with Congress. But I do, and it's going to be very hard. I was just telling the leader and the speaker that it's going to be very hard for the Democrats to vote against the one big, beautiful deal. The greatest tax cuts in history, greatest everything, but that standpoint. I just told him, I called him up about this. I said, I'm going to do it. Confrontation, but never to this extent of what he was doing. Drugs that he negotiated are now over 200% more expensive in America than the rest of the world, and far more expensive than when he even got involved. Much more expensive than when he got involved. Joe Biden's plan was as you know, because you wrote about it, you don't say it very loudly, but it was a very big failure. Was this unfairly shipped like the United States anymore? Given a price by the European Union, let America pay it. The principal countries, because there are some will be reduced almost immediately by that we are paying. But out but they're rich.
Here
totally
it is, yeah.
Abide by this principle voluntarily, or we'll use the power of the federal government to ensure that we are paying.
You like my memory? I knew almost exactly where it was in this.
The same price as other countries. To accelerate these price restrictions and reductions, my administration will also cut out the middlemen. We're going to totally cut out the famous middlemen. Nobody knows who they are. Middlemen.
UNH is the middleman.
I've been hearing the term for 25 years. Middlemen. I don't know who they are, but they're rich. That I can tell you. We're going to cut out the middlemen and facilitate the direct sale of drugs at the most favored nation price.
All right, you've been watching.
That's when CBS got the message, cut it off. Cut it off. CVS is Aetna. Under criminal investigation for Medicare fraud, although I'm not sure that is as bad as it sounds. Buffett says he stepped down after finally feeling his age. I'm just getting too old. Too old for this bullshit. I don't give a fuck anymore. Let me buy the quantum. There's qubits. What's a qubit? Medicare Advantage. I was doing an Elon impression for my girl last night. It was pretty funny.